everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching around the world. Thank you so much for being here to another Saturday with Power Query. My name is Alejandra Horvath, and I'm very happy that you are joining me today. As you saw, I'm gonna show you an example where List.Buffer really makes a difference in performance. So, without further ado, oh, hi, Mark. How are you doing? I hope your weekend is going well and you are enjoying with the family, with the grandkids. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen and very quickly. So I'm going to work with one example that I showed you 3 weeks ago because I have another technique also to show you. So let me see if here, Kasim, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're doing well and you're having a great weekend. Thank you so much, John. Hola, how are you doing? Very nice. Mucho gusto que estés aquí, John. Thank you so much. Yes, we need superpowers today. So I brought my cape, and I don't know how you call this thing on your face, but yes, it's kind of a superhero. We need the superhero side of us today. So thank you, Mark. Excellent. Okay, so 3 weeks ago, I showed you one technique using list accumulate to replace values, like bulk values. This is the original text. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Let me hide this part because I saw this already. So in the class 3 weeks ago, we had this text where I want to replace this code, or only this part of the code. I want to replace it with the new numbers. I have my current numbers on this list on the right, and I have my new numbers in the second column of this table. So the technique that I showed you 3 weeks ago is a code provided by Alejandro Simon. He is a member of my other channel. He is part of the audience, and he has been very helpful providing a lot of codes and a lot of solutions, very advanced solutions. So at that time, I showed you that technique. List accumulate is fantastic. Is very helpful with this kind of examples. However, with that technique, when we have, for example, I have Jorge, this word, George in Spanish, I have the whole word here. And I have Jorge, which is only the 3 first digits. When I use the technique list accumulate will replace the 3 first digits, and in addition to that, we'll keep the GE at the end. So when we did that transformation, Jorge in this specific row was Jorge GE at the end. So just keep that in mind when applying this type of techniques. However, saying that, for example, Jorge was replaced properly with Jorge, and here with Jorge at the starting point, we'll have an additional GE at the end. That technique didn't work well with Jorge and Jorge, but it worked very well with this code that has some interrogation mark at the end or exclamation mark. And this is very important because that technique works with words that have a comma at the end or a period, and we want to still to replace that word, but we don't want to get rid of that comma or that dot. So today, the technique that I'm going to show you is using a function that was provided by another member of our community in the channel in Spanish. His name is Dilbani Sergio Casanova. Thank you so much for the code. Of course, I get permission to use these solutions to show you. So I showed them in the other channel already. And with that technique, we cannot replace these items with a specific character at the end. For example, if we have a specific word that we want to replace and it has a comma or a dot or a semicolon, it's not going to be replaced. However, with this technique, we won't have the issue that we have with Jorge and Jorge. So it's one, it works for one thing, it doesn't work for the other. And the previous technique, it doesn't work well with Jorge and Jorge, but it works very well with this, with the characters at the end. Okay. So once we are going to be working with that technique, with the custom function, we will need, of course, our previous codes, the old ones, the ones that we want to replace, and we are going to have a column with the new codes. Okay, so we are going to have two tables. I'm going to go to table design. My first column is called my long text, and the second column is called dim code, dimensional table that has the code, dim code. I'm going to go to the end of this dim codes table, control a row down, and then control shift a row up, and I'm going to just deselect the first row. So I have a list of old codes and new codes of 102 items. Here at the count, I can see 102 items. And now if I go to my long list, I start in row 3, control shift down, I have 992,151 items. And so keep that in mind, because if the techniques are impacting performance, of course, when you have tables that are very long and long in rows and long in columns, that can be very significant. In this case, it's very simple. My list with the old and new codes is only 100 rows. It's not that bad. But if, in your case, if you have tables that are bigger and more complex than this, it will be, your performance will be impacted. So for that reason, List.Buffer comes to the rescue and is gonna improve the performance. Keep in mind that when we use List.Buffer, the list, which will be the list with these codes, the old and new, this list will stay in memory. So we are going to use memory instead of using the list generating every single row. So we will keep this in memory, so it doesn't need to generate every single row when we need to replace every single item. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go, let's say you're gonna start with this workbook. I'm going to provide this workbook with this table and this other table. Also, I will provide in the query editor, I will provide the custom function that Dilbani shared with us. Once you are here, I'm going to right click to my first table and select Get Data from Table Range. If you don't have Microsoft 365 or Excel 2021, then you're going to go to Data and look for, you are going to be inside of the table and look for From Table Range, and you're going to click there. Okay. The Power Query Editor will open, and we will see our table there. Of course, I have more stuff because I was testing before the class, and let me delete this one that is on top. So I have one folder with the solved items, and I have another folder that says other queries. That is where I have my table that I just called my long text. And I'm gonna press Ctrl Shift Plus just to zoom in. You can see that Power Query created two steps for me, and it called my query my long text. And I'm gonna leave this one as my long text live. As you can see, on the side of the queries, I can change the name here as well. I'm gonna press Enter, and now the name has been changed here and also here. Perfect. So this is what I need, but Power Query created the step source, which is bringing my table using the Excel workbook function open and close parentheses, is going to bring from the name of this table is my long text, and that is inside of the column content. It changed the data type. I don't need that. I really is unnecessary. So I'm going to remove that part. Oh, and look, Alejandro is here. Alejandro, I was just talking about you. Estaba yo hablando de ti, del código que compartiste, List.Accumulate. I was talking about Alejandro, about his code that we shared 3 weeks ago with List.Accumulate. Excellent. Thank you, Alejandro. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Awesome. I hope you're having a very nice weekend. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So now that we have this part here, as I said, we don't need the change type. It's a text. It really doesn't matter to me if we change it to text. I'm fine with this part. The next thing that I need to do, I need to bring the list or the table, rather. I'm going to bring my table with the old code and the new code. And I can go to Excel to grab it, or I can click on my query, right click, and duplicate, because both tables are coming from the same workbook. It's just that I need a different table, right? So I'm going to rename this query. I'm going to double click at the name of my long text live 2 inside of parentheses. Let me just open this so you can see. So I'm going to double click there. And I'm going to call this dim code live. Excellent. And Jose is here. Hola, Jose. Thank you for being here. I hope you're having a very nice weekend. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Okay, excellent. Dim codes live. However, I don't need the table my long text. I need my table dim codes, right? I'm gonna press enter, and now I have the table that I really need. Again, Power Query changed Power Query changed the data type. Sorry, I have a lapsus here. Okay, but it didn't change really anything. So I'm gonna remove this step. And the thing that I'm gonna do, and this is very important, I need to change this column with the new code as a text, because these are not numbers. These numbers are part of my original code. My original code, if I go to my table, my long text, it has one portion where it's saying the area that should be south, pipe, the old code, pipe, and the store. So when I go to my dim codes live, this old code needs to be replaced, and it needs to be text, because if I don't change it as text during the process, I'm going to have an issue. So I'm going to have an error, and I need to be careful and make sure that that's not going to happen. Heads up, if you don't change this, you have an error later on, just come back to this part, to this table, and just change new for text. Now you can see you have ABC here on the little square, and now we have this that it says change type. I'm just going to remove the space between change and type. I'm going to press enter. Excellent. So this is my dim code live, and I'm going to apply 2 techniques here. For that reason, I'm going to duplicate this query, and I'm going to leave this as original so we can always go back and just take a quick look if we need to. So I'm going to duplicate this twice. So right click and duplicate, and I duplicate twice. The first one, dim code, I'm going to call that one, actually live 1. And the second one, I'm going to call that one live 2. And that is because I need to convert this into a list. I need to convert this with the old code, new code in one line, or in one list, I mean. The second list will be this code on the top, and then this other code, the new code in the second line, and so on and so forth. So I can replace this later on in my long text table. Okay, the first thing The first technique that I'm going to use is the one that I learned from Bavia. Bavia is a person who has his own channel, and also he participates in those daily challenges from XLBI. He's fantastic. So that's where I learned this technique from him. And it says table to rows. So I'm going to convert this table to rows. Open parentheses. I need a table. The table is coming from my previous step, which is change type. I go to the end, close parentheses, and I press enter. And this is converted into list. This list has, as I mentioned, the old code on the top and the new code at the bottom for every single item in the list. We have 102 items, right? So we have 102 pairs with the old and the new. Perfect. And the second technique, and that I learned that from Alejandro, who's here. Thank you, Alejandro. And that is a very simple, and it just, when I saw it, like, oh yeah, it's so simple, but you don't know until you see it in someone else, right? So we have our table here. So I'm gonna add a new column. I'm gonna say add column, custom column. And that one I'm gonna call final, let's say. Final, I like to call that the last column that I'm going to use there. And if I need list, well, to tell Power Query that this is a list, I need to provide the curly brackets. Oh, can you see well there? It's quite small. Let me do it manually so I can show it in the formula bar so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to say cancel. Yes, I want to lose this. So once I'm here on my table, I'm going to create a new step. I'm going to click at FX. After the equal, I'm going to say table add column. I'm going to open parentheses. The table is coming from my previous step, comma. The name of the new column, as I said, I'm going to say it's going to be final. I'm going to say comma. And what I'm going to do, I need to provide, I want a list. Well, the list will be created. I need to tell Power Query is a list, so I'm going to provide the curly brackets. And my list is going to be made of the first column, current, comma, and I provide that inside of the square bracket. And then the next one will be from my column, new. I'm going to close parentheses, and let's see what happens. Of course, I missed the each here. Sorry, I didn't tell Power Query what to process. I just gave the list signs, but I didn't tell Power Query process the following. So I'm missing the each, and that's what I'm providing here. I'm going to press enter now, and now I have a column with the lists. Same thing, old code, new code, perfect. I don't want a column. I want a list. I want something like my theme code, the one from the technique that I learned from Bavia. So I want a list. I don't want a column. I don't want a table, right? So I'm going to go to my next query. And remember, I can just do a projection here. So let's say I'm going to move this a little bit, shift enter, or yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to say this. At the end, when the parentheses are closing, then I'm going to say that I want the column final as a list, right? I go to the end, I press enter, and now I have a list exactly the same that I have from the other technique. Perfect. We're doing progress. We're making progress here. Perfect. Now what do I need to do? Well, I need to change, this is the original table with the theme codes, the old and the new. I need to go to my long text live. And I need to bring the custom function that Dilvani shared with us. So I have it here. I'm just gonna move it down. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna provide this workbook with this function inside. And let's see what this function is doing. I am gonna go to View, Advanced Editor, and Control-Shift plus. This function is asking me for my text. The text will be provided with that column code where I have the old code inside of the whole text, right? In the middle of the text, let's say. So I need to provide this as text. And also I need to provide my code as a list. That's why we provided this information. That's why we transform these dim codes into list, because we will need it as part of this function. Okay, so the first thing that this function is going to do is going to have the value of this variable a, which will be trimming the text that I provide. So first, I'm going to trim that text to make sure that I don't have spaces at the end or at the beginning. This function takes care only of the empty spaces at the end and at the beginning. Okay, so it's going to trim that text first. Once it's trimmed, then it's going to split the text that is coming from my previous variable, and it's going to split it by the space. Once it's trimmed, then it's going to replace, so it's going to use the function list replace matching items, which will be the information that is coming from my previous variable, and it's going to replace those items based on the list that I'm going to provide, which will be these dim codes live 1 and 2. Perfect. And then once it's done, then it's going to close this, and it's going to get the text combined. That's going to be the result. It's going to combine the text that is coming from my last variable, and it's going to combine it by the space. Okay, let's do this step by step. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to get this as a comment so I can keep this for later on. And we're going to see little by little what this function is doing. So first, I'm going to say that I want to see the result of this function. I want that this function brings me only the text trim from the text that I'm bringing, okay? So I'm going to replace, or I'm going to use the value of my variable a to see the result. I'm going to say done. So I'm going to go to my long text live, and I'm going to invoke this function. So I'm going to go to, actually, I'm going to do it here so you can see. I'm going to create a new step, and I'm going to say equals table add column. I'm going to open parentheses. The table is coming from my previous step, which is source, which is really the starting point. I'm going to go to the end, comma. The new column is going to be called final, or new codes, let's say. New codes, yeah. Comma, which function? Oh, first of all, I need to tell Power Query to process the following, so I need to say each, otherwise I'm going to get an error again. Now that I told Power Query, please process the following, which function do I want to use? Well, I'm going to use the function from Dilbany, it's fx Dilbany. To invoke that function, I just need to open the parentheses, and now I can see that that function is going to ask me for my text and my codes. I'm not going to use my codes yet, but the function needs that, so I need to provide it. I'm going to say my text is coming from my column code, so I'm going to provide the square brackets, code. Go to the end of the closing the square brackets, comma. I need to provide my codes as list. And you can see that even it says here as list, because that's how we ask this parameter, right? Well, that's going to be coming from dim codes live 1. Dim codes live 1. Perfect. Go to the end, close parentheses, and press enter. If the enter doesn't work, then click at the check mark. And I think I'm missing one parenthesis. That is closing the table add column. I'm going to say enter. Perfect. Now you can see that really nothing looks happening here. But in this case, if some of these text in column code had spaces at the beginning or at the end, the function got rid of them, okay? Perfect. That is the first step. Let's go to the function again. Let's bring the next value. Ctrl+Shift+ to zoom in. Now, instead of having as a result the value of variable b, a, I'm going to bring variable b, which is my text split by the space. So I change that here, B, and I'm going to say done. And I'm going to go back to my long text live. And now you can see that our column new code has lists inside. If I click this side of the list, now you can see what Power Query did based on the function that I provided. Split our text by the space. So you can see that there is a space between south and the pipe, and that's why these two elements or these two items are split in our list. There is a space between that pipe and the code, or the Han 95 167 23 interrogation mark. Well, that is the next item, and so on and so forth. Even store one here is also split. Okay, perfect. Now, that happened with every single item in our list. So we can see that the function is working properly, even those items that don't have any specific character at the end, even with those ones, it works. Perfect. Now let's go to our function and let's bring the last variable, Control C plus. I'm going to say in C. I'm going to bring C. I'm not going to combine it yet. I want you to see what C brings, which is the replacing items, right? It's going to replace the matching items from this list using the information provided by my codes, which is the list, dim codes live 1 or 2. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go back to my long text live. And now you can see that it's taking time because now it's replacing the items, right? So now with this one, as I said, with this technique, those items that have any character that is different to the list of the dim codes is not going to be replaced. With the technique with using list accumulate from Alejandro, that one will work, but this one won't because it's replacing the items that really match. That's why the list replace matching items. So it's going to replace only those items that truly match 100%. So this is one, right? This one doesn't have those characters. So I click on the right, and sure enough, Han 73 14423 is not there anymore. Now I have the new code that is 9530129. And same with the next one, and so on. Perfect. You can see that it's working properly. And now let's go back, let's go down where we have Jorge, and you can see here I have Jorge, I have Jorge in here, and now I have Jorge right here. That is correct. Now I have Jorge here, and this one doesn't have the additional GE as I mentioned in the beginning. Perfect. This one works very well with this type of items. However, it won't work that well with with those characters that we have at the end of this text. Okay, perfect. Now that I have this information, I can see that the replacements are done where is applicable. I'm going to go to my function again. I'm going to go to the advanced editor and Control C plus. I'm going to delete that C. And now I'm going to delete the double dash, backslash, the line that is like this. I don't remember. Okay. So the result will be text combined. We are going to combine all those lines that you saw. Now we're going to put them back together, and we're going to use the information from the last variable. We're going to combine that through an space. Okay, I'm going to say done. I go back to my table where we are working, and you can see that it's taking time. You can see here, you can see that wheel spinning and spinning. Perfect, it has finished. So these items were not able to be replaced, but everything else was replaced. We have here the correct information for Jorge and Jorge, perfect, and so on. And we have over 990,000. I don't remember how many rows we had, so we have a lot of rows, right? So the replacement was done, but if I go to source and I come back to custom one, you can see how long it takes for that wheel to be spinning, right? It takes time. And as I said at the beginning, this is a very simple example. This is a very simple text. But if you have more complex information, if you have longer tables, and not just the table where you have the original text, but the tables with the old code and the new code, let's say, the old text and the new text, then you're going to have issues, performance issues. It's going to take too long for the query to run and to finish. And here is where List.Buffer comes to the rescue. And first of all, before we go that far, I want you to see that with this technique from Bavia, it takes quite a bit of time. Let's see what happened with the technique from Alejandro, live 2. So I'm going to remove the 1, I'm going to put the 2, I'm going to go to the end, I'm going to press enter. I'm going to go back to, let me minimize this, I'm going to go back to my source and go back to custom 1, and same thing. It takes time for the wheel to finish processing all the replacements because it goes to every single line and recreates those lists, which is quite time consuming and resources consuming, right? So you can see that is exactly the same effect. Well, let's go to our advanced editor, Control C plus. After my let, I'm going to add one more variable. I'm going to press Control closing the square bracket. And here I'm going to say, this is going to be X. I'm going to say equal. And instead of this, having this list here with the old code and the new code, I'm going to Control X. And I'm going to paste that here on the top, Control V. And I'm going to keep this as List.Buffer. It's a list already. So I'm going to say List.Buffer. Open parentheses, I need to provide a list that is coming from dim code live 2, comma at the end, because I have another variable after that. And in here, where I remove that part, which is the second part of my fx Dilbani, let me move this one a little bit more over here so we will have more room. So I have my function from Dilbani. I have my first parameter. My first parameter, remember, is my text. And the second parameter is my code, which is a list. Well, that list now will come from my variable x, which is a list that is in memory through the List.Buffer. I'm going to go here and I'm going to provide that x. I'm going to say done. And look, I'm going to go to source. I go to the end, and you can see that the wheel barely spins. Watch again, because you probably missed it. So I'm going to go source. I'm going to go back to custom 1, and it has been done. You can see the difference in performance just by keeping this simple list in List.Buffer. So now imagine how much it can do for you if you have more complex examples. So I'm going to go to source again, go to custom 1, and look how fast. I'm going to go to my variable x, and I'm going to change this. Instead of live 2, I'm going to say live 1. I'm going to press enter. It's still inside of my List.Buffer is the technique from Bavia. I'm going to go to custom. I double click, I double click, and then I have, if you double click, you will get this box from the invoke custom function, just cancel. So I'm going to go to source, I'm going to go to custom 1, same thing. Again, source, custom 1. You see how fast the transformation is with either of these techniques on the list? It doesn't matter. The transformation happens so quickly thanks to List.Buffer. But again, keep in mind that this list will remain in memory, so your Excel might be a little bit slow. So keep that in mind, okay? In my case, as I said, it's very simple, but you can see the benefit of using List.Buffer when necessary, okay? Yes, Mark, it's very impressive how much the performance improves just by using the correct place, first of all, to put the list buffer, because the list buffer cannot be inside of the function. Let's say, if I do this, I copy this part, Control C, and I'm going to go to my last step where let me hide this part. If I go here, where I invoke my function, and instead of X, if I provide the list buffer here inside of the function already, and then I press enter, I go to source, and I go back to custom one, there is no difference in performance because I'm doing it inside of a function. It's not in memory. It's not in memory in the right time. You won't see the benefit. If you go to source and go to custom one, you can see that the wheel starts spinning. What you need to be careful of is where you locate your list buffer. I'm going to replace that for the X, which is the one that has the list buffer, and I'm going to press enter. I go to source and custom one, and now you can see that it didn't take any time to do the transformation. Okay, so that is very important to see. Excellent. So that's why this is a superhero tip or technique, because it really helps with the performance. It really makes a big difference. So I don't see questions. Since I'm here, let me show you one thing, because with the code that Alejandro helped us last time, the one that I provided 3 weeks ago, that video is available, and it says replace multiple values, and that was on March 18. Alejandro really provided, what is that one? Will this accumulate? Provided a code. We used nested let. Let me just show you what happened here. Well, let me see if I can show you, because probably not. Oh, yeah, I know why. Okay. Probably I won't be able to show you, but let me try something. Let me go home, close and load. Oh, no, actually, no, I don't need to go to close and load. So I'm going to go just to my dim codes live. And that is because with the technique from Alejandro, I need to change the type on the new column, but also on the current column, because I have numbers here. And for what I'm seeing with the list accumulate technique, I'm getting the error because it recognized this not as a text, but as a number. So I'm gonna go to dim codes live, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be text as well. And I'm gonna show you what happens with the technique that Alejandro said, but this is an improved code. It's fantastic because it's just one line. I'm gonna go right click, new query, file. Actually, no. I'm gonna copy from my long text live. I'm gonna go to source, and I'm gonna copy this, because what I need is to bring the information from this workbook. I need to bring just the table before the transformation. So I'm gonna right click, new query, other sources, blank query. I'm gonna say Control V, and from here I'm gonna say enter. This is my table, my original table. I don't need the change type. And from here, I'm gonna add a column. Oh, actually, I'm gonna do it here. FX. I'm gonna click there, and I'm gonna say table add column. Open parentheses. I'm gonna go to the end, and this is gonna be called final and comma each. And from here, what I'm gonna do, okay, shift enter. And I'm gonna say list accumulate. I'm gonna open parentheses, and I need to provide a list. The list will be my dim code live one, comma, and I need to provide the seed. The seed is the starting point. It's gonna be my starting point, and once it start accumulating, will be my accumulated value. So the first value that I will have the seed, the seed will be my starting point, my code. And then once the first line is transformed, it starts accumulating the results. So their accumulated result will be my seed. So you want to see and want to learn more about list accumulate, please watch the video from March 18. I explain with more detail this function, okay? So the seed in this case will be my column code. That is where I have all my text, right? And it says south, pipe, the all code, pipe, store one, okay? So that will be my seed. And for this specific function, I need to provide a function, an accumulator as function, and it's mandatory that I use two parameters. My first parameter will be S, and my second parameter will be C. State and current. You can call these parameters as you want. However, I like to keep these initials or call it state and current. So in my mind, I remember what everything means when I look at the documentation for this function. So I'm going to provide the goes to symbol because this is going to be a function as requested. And from there, what I want to do is list replace, if I remember correctly. Let's replace value. Oh, no, actually it's text replace. Okay, let me check my code because I don't remember anymore. Let me go here. Text replace, this one. So I'm gonna go to my query, like one that I'm working on, query one. So I'm gonna say this is gonna be list replace. And what I want from there is the text. The text will be my state, which, as I mentioned, my state, oh, did I mention? Well, my state will be the accumulated value, and my current will be every single item on my list, okay? So will be my state. Let me move this one down, Shift Enter. And then from here, I need the alt text, if I remember correctly, right here, alt as text. The alt text will be my current and will be, remember that our list has the alt text on the top and the new text at the bottom. Every single list will have that, right? So the current is referring to that list and it will refer to the first item. The first item on that list has my alt text. So will be 0 and then say comma. And my new text will be from the current, from every single list. Now I want to bring the second item on the list. Remember, Power Query is base 0. For that reason, the first item is 0 and the second item is 1. And I think this is correct. And I cross my fingers and something is not correct. Let me see, why not? But I changed the type. Didn't I? Oh, I didn't. Sorry. I'm using code live 1. And this one, you can see that I didn't change the type, only change for the new. So I'm going to change this for text. And that's why it's very important to know these type of things, right? So excellent. And I'm going to go to dim codes live 2 just to make sure that I make the change what I should. So current, and I'm going to change it for text. And I'm going to say insert this. Perfect. I'm going to go to my query and now works. Phew. Scare me. So now you can see, originally we had a code that had, after the each, had a nested let. Now with this new code that is more sophisticated, more robust, now we have only one line. And with this technique, as I mentioned at the beginning, with the list accumulate technique, we have the transformation on these items, regardless if they have a character at the end. So it really replaces only the part that matches, for example, this part before the apostrophe. This part is replaced with a new code that is this part and leaves the apostrophe at the end. Let me do it with something that is more is easier to see. This part here has an asterisk at the end. If I go to the next cell, you have that, the new code, and it leaves that apostrophe, that asterisk. So as I mentioned, this is very useful when you have text that has comma, dot, or semicolon, or something like that. Then that works perfectly. Colon, semicolon. The thing with this technique is, as I mentioned before, we have Jorge in here, and when it does the transformation, because it has this Jorge has 3 items that match the old code. Now it brings the new code without realizing that this word is correct. So it brings replace that JOR, it replace that for Jorge, and it leaves the last 2 characters. So the technique with the Dilbani's custom function doesn't do that, replaces only the items that truly match to that list. But with that technique, we cannot convert the items that have any of these characters at the end. And with this technique, this works, but Jorge and Jorge doesn't work. Okay, excellent. That's all that I have for you today. I hope you find it useful. And I'm gonna add these files for you to practice. I'm gonna add them in the description of this video, and I hope you find it useful. And it really, List.Buffer, it makes a big difference in the performance of your queries. And as I said, just keep in mind that that will stay in the memory when you're working with that, right? Why don't you stop detection to change type? Detection to change type. I had to change it, Jose, because I had to change it for text. I didn't change it in purpose. I mean, I changed it in purpose only to change the text in one column, but not in the other column. Even though Power Query didn't recognize that column as text, it had the ABC 1, 2, 3, but for some reason it recognized it like, okay, look, this is a number. This is potentially a number, and recognize it. So I had to change it as a text both. So let me show you very quickly here. Present, share. And so it's easier right here for me to show you. So let's say here, I'm gonna remove, actually, let me just copy this part, Control C. I'm gonna create a new query, right click on the right, new query, other sources, blank query. I'm gonna go from there, Control V, and I'm gonna press Enter. And it changed the type, right? But you can see that even when it says that, at the top, it says ABC123, ABC123. It really didn't recognize a specific type. It's still between text and numbers, right? So with the text, it's not an issue. The problem comes with the numbers. In our process, let's say for dim codes live 1, the thing that I had done before I got the error, is that I changed this new as text only. And that's because I was going to transform only with the custom function from Dilbani. But now that I use the technique with list accumulate looks everything. And it says, wait a minute, I'm using a text function here, and you're giving numbers. Even though when you see query 2, I had originally, before the error, I had the column current as ABC123. So somehow recognize that as number. So even if I delete this and I just change this as a text, you can see that current stays as ABC123, and it will give me that error again. So very tricky. Very tricky, this one. This is not as simple as just go to, the file and change the settings. It's not as easy as that. It's specifically for the content of this column. even you saw that I deleted that step and I just changed the type on this column current will remain ABC 1 to 3, and it will bring the same issue because you can see that these items are on the right, which means on the left goes the text type and on the right goes the number type right here, right? So now that I change this to text, all these numbers are on the left and all these numbers here are on the right. So that means that these are recognized as numbers and these are recognized as text, and it has ABC 1 to 3, and there is not a specific type for this column. It has a mix, let's say. Okay. I hope that's what you were saying. Okay. Okay. Excellent. I don't see more comments. I'm going to stop sharing. So thank you so much for joining me and for giving me time of your Saturday. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Very glad that you asked. Yeah, it's a very good question. Excellent. So I don't have anything else to show you. So thank you so much for joining. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And I see you here next Saturday with another Saturday with Power Query. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.